Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Tracker, Season 1, Episode 12. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I figured it, like I said, I didn't know if it was going to be this episode, maybe it'd be a teaser at the end of this episode and mainly be in the season finale, but it's like, nope, penultimate episode, we get introduced to Russell. All I had to do was see that silhouette. I was like, it is Jensen Ackles. And it's like strolling up in the classic car. You're like, okay, like it's like at this point you kind of have some winks and nods. I even love, like, I didn't think about it. It took me a second, but like when, Coulter is talking to Bobby, I was like, oh, sing the name Bobby around him is so funny, especially considering, like, well, I was like, obviously they didn't have any scenes together in The Boys, but him and Jim Beaver were both in The Boys, so interesting how that happens and stuff like that. But anyway, putting my tangents aside, obviously it's also a beautiful reunion of Smallville alumni. They were not on Smallville at the same time, but still. I think it's actually really interesting. We find out that Coulter actually reached out to his brother like a week ago and was like, hey, let's set up a meet, and it fell through. We find out, like, stuff in this episode is kind of related to why it fell through, but it's interesting to know, like, right, the conversation with Dory last episode really did spark that he was willing to listen to Russell. He'd been avoiding it for so long because he did believe Russell has something to do with their father's death, and it's just he wasn't getting answers, and just, like, I guess so much silence and being away, and just it drove that rift between them bigger and bigger until, like, all, you know, once again, as Dory said, like, all Coulter did was, like, he basically had to drown in all of, like, their mom's perception on things, and so it became his perception on things, and it's kind of like, you're so wrapped up in what mom's telling you, you're not even considering whether it's all the truth or whether it's 100% BS. So, which, Russell sits down and tells his perspective on it. He's like, I didn't kill Dad. Like, either he fell, someone else pushed him, I don't know. But I can tell you there was someone else there in the woods. I know who that person was because I've seen them before, talking to Mom. So whatever it is, he's like, Mom's got her own secrets. Dad was kind of batshit crazy, but there's something up with Mom too. Just like Dory was saying. And he's like, the fact is, the reason why he left home is because their mom suggested he did. It's like, right, it'd be better for everyone to just kind of move on and forget what happened. And he did. He went off, eventually joined the military, and he spent like 18 years in the military. And so he spent time away, and as the more years passed, the easier and easier it became to be away and stay away. So obviously, once again, the conversation Dory had last episode with Coulter 2 of kind of has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because there's just so many, like, unanswered questions. Like I said, he didn't outwardly say it, but you can infer a little bit from it that maybe Dory did strike the nail on the head when she was like, I think you resent me a little bit for leaving. Like, you were the one that kind of had to shoulder a lot of that. And it's like, he's become a slave to this whole situation with his mom and drowning in the past a little bit, not being able to quite let go. And it's like, maybe if he had to share some of that burden with his siblings, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad for him. He wouldn't be able to... Maybe he'd be a little more well-adjusted. I mean, their childhood kind of messed them all up. But, I mean, it seems like Dory is doing best. Out of any of the siblings, she seems to be doing the best. I mean, Russell seems okay. He's in a private, special ops sector. So, it seems like he's okay. It does seem like, if I had to probably put it in order, I would say Dory, Russell, then Coulter, from who's doing the best to who's doing the worst. So, either way, this all stems from... Russell has a friend named Doug, someone he was in the military with. They were in the same unit, and in fact, like, after their stint in the military, they worked for this company called Horizon. It's a private set company that they do jobs for, and I thought was interesting, and I figured it was connected somehow, was every time Horizon came up conversation-wise, he was so quick to shut that down. And I was like, why are you doing that? And it's like, we find out, like, I mean, they do some shady stuff. Like, we do assassination stuff. We do this and that. We do, like, you know, some off-the-book jobs, titled the episode. So it makes sense. You probably don't want to talk about it. You're up, like, signed so many NDA. You got NDAs up the wazoo about what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. But it's still just like, because he didn't want to bring anything back to the company because he probably really believed it had nothing to do with it, or at least he didn't want to because he's like, if it is something related to the company, they're not going to say anything because it's about protecting themselves. They want plausible deniability, and that comes up in the episode. But I think but like I just, you knew from the beginning like something of that nature was going to be the case. I also love that it's like, once again, just like they always, it feels like everyone sneaks in little things of supernatural, but it's like, because sometimes you're wondering like how much is just supernatural stuff creeping in and being winked and nodded to, and how much is just like, now we're just doing this because it's part of the character, like him chilling and staying in a motel. It's like, well, he's not living here, so. But Sam and Dean out spent so much of their time on the road and out and about in motels and stuff. It's like, how much of that's just like, oh, a wink and nod to Sam and Dean, and how much is just the fact is, hey, he's a ex-military guy, working the private sector, needs somewhere to bunker down, so he's staying in a hotel for a bit, They went to go see Tracy, who is Doug's wife, who she's, because of the job and work they have, they can't talk about it. And so it is the thing, she's left so much in the dark, which makes her that much scared, because she doesn't even have any information to begin with, to even begin wondering what happened to her husband, because he just up and disappeared. He's been acting a little skittish and scared lately, like he's being followed, and he's extremely paranoid. So she also got sent a finger in the mail. Well, not in the mail. It was just delivered to her house. Luckily, Coulter was able to run to print, which I love that, like, Russell's like, wait, you got a guy? He's like, yeah, I kind of got like an operations type of guy, that being Bobby, and kind of did an old-fashioned thing, making your own version of a fingerprint, fingerprinting. I can't think of a proper word for like the ink and processing for fingerprinting and stuff like that. But yeah, found out the guy's identity. Turns out the guy's dead. They had to sneak into the morgue, because I love that. I thought Coulter, when Russell was like, let me handle this, I was like, oh, he's going to crash and burn, and it's going to be up to Coulter to smooth things over. But even Coulter couldn't work. But I love that it's like, hey, it's like, oh yeah, like, oh, you got such kind eyes. We should go out for dinner sometime or something like that. I'm like swoozing that good old Jensen Ackles charm. So, but that did not work. So they ended up having to sneak in. And I love the whole, just like little things between them where it's just like Coulter kind of hops up, the side of the building really easily, and he's walking a little bit. He has to turn back around. He's like, come on, what are you doing, Russell? Hurry up. He's like, all right. And he's climbing up. And he's like, oh yeah, put your leg there. He's like, all right, I got it. And the moment Coulter tries to hold his hand out to help him, he's like, move out of the way. Stop it. It's like, yeah, like just him being very prideful and stuff, but him, he is the older brother, so it's like, getting a little too over the shit type of thing. But it's like, I guess that just shows like, oh, Coulter's in much better shape. Obviously, Russell's in good shape too, but I think Coulter's one younger and in better shape. So, yeah, but ultimately ended up getting busted. I figured as much. The moment they snuck in there, I was like, they're going to get busted and Reenie's going to show up, isn't she? And it's like, of course she is. And once again, being so flirtatious with Reenie, being like, ooh, who is this? What's going on between the two of you? And he's like, oh, is she free? And Coulter's like, no, she's off limits. He's like, I'm just messing with you, bro. I was just, just to see your face. I'm like, I don't think you are. Because, like, him and, like, Reenie kept having their back and forths. And it's like snappy, like, little sly conversations they have. Because it's like, oh, here you are. Like, she also did a deep background on him. Despite, like, Coulter not really ever talking about his brother. I mean, he didn't really talk about it with Bobby, so I'm assuming he never really talked about it with Reenie. Obviously, he's closer to Reenie than he is Bobby, but still, him and Bobby are still tight. But I'm like, I don't know. I think all Reenie knows about him is just stuff she picked up on her own, being like, oh, let me look into this. Finding out, like, yeah, oh, you broke into that morgue. That wasn't Russell's idea. That was Coulter. She's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because she's had to bail. I mean, literally, that was our introduction to Reenie in at the beginning of the series, was her bailing him out in the exact same situation. So it's like, it happens far too often. She's used to this. So She even said like, oh yeah, like the judge or prosecutor was like more willing to be lenient because she's like, yeah, troublesome clients is kind of how Rooney pitched in. It's like, yeah, he has continued to be a troublesome client, so it's not that far of a stretch. It's like, oh, you're the guy that my brother who works for my brother. She's like, no, I work with your brother, and only when I get paid, which I always get paid. He's like, I bet you do. I believe the next thing had led them was they ended up tracking the guy that died, where they kind of found his body potentially, and it's the people who gave him like these blessings, protections, because apparently there were people in Russell's unit who were kind of about the like magic and stuff and believed in blessings and stuff. So they went to these people, which they pulled guns on, which I love Russell being like, all right, shoot my brother first. And he's like, Coulter's like, what, really? He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, all right, so you're going to try to shoot us at the same time. 3, and they took down the guys and got the information from them. And it's all reversed to a guy named Solano. And it's like the name immediately struck a chord with Russell, because he's like, there's a guy that they killed as part of a mission for Horizon, but it's like, yeah, the guy's definitely dead, I'm sure of it, but like apparently Doug got caught on camera because he went back to retrieve a knife for Russell, and it's like, I guess because he knows the knife meant a lot to Russell, he probably knew like the specifics of it was a gift from his now deceased dad, so he probably had extra motivation of like, he probably also saw it as, because he was someone that was superstitious, he probably believed it to, because it was kind of like a good luck charm that like Russell's kept with him all these decades later. So it's probably a thing of he probably believed it to be kind of a good luck charm. So it's like, I don't want you to lose that, especially the sentimental value for it. But because Doug got caught on photos, like his brother is who the main person is. It's Carlos. He's Moy Solano, because Moy Solano was the person they killed. Carlos was in prison at the time, so that's why he's only waiting till now. And once again, they caught Doug's picture when he went back to retrieve the knife, and that's what this is all about. You know, it's like, and Carlos wants to be able to kill Doug with his own hand. So like that's why they didn't just kill Doug before now. It's like, which it would have been simpler. Good thing Carlos was all about doing it himself, because they were going to transport him. So this gave them at least some amount of time to strike first. And they ended up learning about all this because they also went to visit Russell's handler, which the actress who plays her, his handler, and it's funny because she's also in the show Motherland Fort Salem, because I was just talking about the actor from last episode that was in Motherland Fort Salem. So just back to back. Once again, it's always funny when you can kind of like connect different people to TV shows they might have been in at the same time and stuff like that. I don't even remember if those characters ever crossed. I think they had to have crossed paths in that show, and I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. Either way, I just think that's funny and interesting. But she was kind of your typical person with Horizon being like, yeah, you signed some NDAs, I'm not going to talk about this. Basically, they're just going to let this handle itself out. No matter what happens to Doug, whatever happens to Doug, sadly happens to Doug, because they don't want to like stir up any troubles, anything that could blow back on their company. So even if Doug has to die in the process, oh well, like it's just because the person thereafter specifically is Doug, and as long as it doesn't trace fully back to them, they don't have to worry about any like reciprocity. It's just going to all be on Doug. Like he'll suffer the brunt of it. So that's what eventually led to the safe house, where they found the camera and found out about him being taken, and they followed I believe the plates to the vehicle. I think eventually led them to where the guys were hidden. I think that in conjunction with like they got information from like Rini had like an FBI friend run it or something like that, so that pointed them in the right direction. And Coulter and Russell locked up, geared up, and dealt with the situation. So Army of Two situation. Russell got shot. I was kind of worried. I was like, I don't think they're gonna kill his brother because that'd be too damn dark. That like the episode they meet up again after all these years and he died. He gets shot, but keeps it moving, and they're luckily able to rescue Doug. And I was like, oh, I thought like there'd be more of a confrontation with Solano, but it turns out Russell's like, nah, I'm gonna handle that on my own. So leaves Doug in Russell's care, and eventually, leaves Doug in Coulter's care, and eventually Coulter's able to take him back home to his wife and everything. But Russell's like, nah, you'll see me again, bro, and I'm gonna go handle this Solano thing. I just, because it's like, right, so if Solano's not taken care of now, he's just gonna keep coming after Doug eventually. So it's like, you got to put him in the ground and deal with this, because if you don't deal with it, like Horizon's not going to, because they're still keeping their hands free of this, even with Doug being returned and everything. It's like they wanted the situation sorted out, so it's like Horizon's not going to do anything. I've got to do something because this is my friend, this is my brother in arms. I got to get his back. So, but this whole thing did have a silver lining in the grand scheme of things, because it reunited Russell and Coulter all these years. It's interesting too, because they had this whole conversation about like what are your plans for afterwards, and for Russell, he wants to open up his own bar and stuff like that and sell his own liquor. But for Coulter, he hadn't really given it too much thought. He's kind of living day by day presently. It's like, this is kind of all there is. But it's like, you got to want something more. So he's like, right, when we see each other again, bro, we will talk about that, like, after plan. Like, after all of this, like, what you're going to do, so... And, he was, reunited, and it was good for them, Reunited and feel so good. I know, like, I almost let that slip by me, but I was singing it in my head, and I was like, well, I have to say it now. But it was kind of nice. Like, he mends fences with both of his siblings. Back-to-back episodes are very poetic. So it's like, well, if that's the case, like, well, next episode, the season finale's got to deal with Mom then. Because we haven't circled back to Mom. We don't even know if he's really talked to their mom since episode 2. That's like the last time. We only saw their mom that one episode. Which I think is very befitting, too, when you consider it. It's like, present day, we've only ever seen each member of his family in one episode each. Mom was, like I said, I believe episode 2. Dora, I was about to say Dora, sorry. Dory was last episode, and now Russell was this episode. So, like, every family member's gotten one episode present day. So, we'll see if we get to see more of their mom next episode in the season finale or not. But I did think it was beautiful that rather than keeping it himself, Russell did leave the knife, because their dad left it for him, but he didn't leave anything like that for Coulter, and now having it in his hand, because it's like, yeah, what their dad said, like, you never know what you could ultimately need and use it for. So I guess at a time too where he's kind of feeling lost, and as he said, he doesn't know what quite to believe. I think he's starting to believe his brother more and more. He was still unsure at the very beginning, but I think after everything, he's believing his brother more. So now it's like, begs the question: what is Mom hiding? What is she up to? Why is she lying? What is she keeping secret? So some very, very interesting developments. I'm very excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the season finale. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.